Okay, so we are into our second unit of AP statistics. The first unit focused on collecting data because remember AP statistics is divided into four major sections, which are you collect the data, then you display and describe the data, you figure the probability of getting data that looks like that, and the fourth one is inferences when we make actual decisions about it. So we are into the collecting data, and basically we need to know that we have two different types of data, which are qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative data is categorical data, and data that's used to describe an attribute, a color, blue, green, red, brown, smell, sweet, bad, etc. Here it says how much pain you feel. Scratch that out. That's really a quantitative data because we're going to put that on a numerical scale. So that's not really going to be a categorical or qualitative. Another categorical qualitative data could be ethnicity and things of that nature. So we can basically come up with a whole lot of categorical data that's non-numerical, whether you have a car or not. Again, non-numerical data. Now, I have to be a little bit careful about when I say it's non-numerical. Non-numerical means it's not measured, all right? We're not measuring it. So qualitative data is data that's not measured in some way. And so there's not an order to it. So typically with qualitative or categorical data, I count the number of occurrences. So I have a number associated. It's like, oh, we have 25 people with brown hair, and we have 10 with blonde hair, and we have 2 that have red hair. Well, obviously my categories would be brown, blonde, and red, but I did count them. Then with quantitative data, we have data that can be measured and expressed numerically. And here order matters, and we have height, weight, GPA, etc. And when we talk about height, well, I should say this about order mattering. With qualitative data or categorical, which comes first? Does brown hair or blonde or red or bald? Which one comes first? Which one comes last? And it's like, okay, well, bald is arguable because a lot of babies are born bald and then end up growing up and having hair and then becoming bald again. So I don't know which order you would put those in, and it's subjective to the person putting the scale together. But when we talk about height or weight or GPA, we definitely have an order to it. In other words, someone that is 4 foot tall is shorter than someone who's 5 foot tall, is someone shorter than someone who's 6 foot tall, or shorter than someone who's 7 foot tall. So basically there is a specific order to them, and that's with quantitative data. With qualitative data, there's not an order to it, and it's non-numerical. Here, quantitative, it is numerical. And under quantitative, we actually have 2 types, and I'm just going to mention them very briefly. We have discrete, and we have continuous. All right, for discrete data is counted numbers. All right, is counted numbers. These are going to be the whole numbers. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then continuous goes along just what you have in your math class. It can assume any value. All right, any value. So we can talk about all the decimals, etc. when we talk about continuous. But we're going to deal with quantitative data later. This section is primarily on qualitative data. All right. And so we're going to begin with talking about qualitative data, mainly because it's less involved and it's non-numerical. And so we're able to talk about it a little bit faster. Because it's qualitative data and is non-numerical, we're not able to talk about the mean or the median or the range, right? We're not able to talk about those because order doesn't matter. And I'll show that to you in just a moment. So you've heard that a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I think that's the case with data. And quite frankly, data displays are going to be extraordinarily important in business because most of the time your manager or your boss isn't going to understand the data, but they can understand the data display. So it's really important. And when I talk about this, I think you will start to see how this works. And our primary measures for qualitative or categorical data, these are our dot plots, bar charts, pie charts, and segmented bar charts. And we'll take a look at all of those in future videos. So let's look at this very first scenario. And we have 35 students were asked to choose their favorite fall sport. And the section were as follows. All right. And we had 3 dot plots are created. And notice we just have the counts of each one. So when we look at basketball, it said 8 people. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We also see over here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And over here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now my question to you is I have 3 different dot plots and which is correct? That's kind of a trick question because every single one of them or all of these are actually correct displays. This one is set up in alpha order. I could have set it up in reverse alpha. This is set up from least to greatest. This is set up from greatest to least. Well, when I look at this, it's like, gosh, this one definitely doesn't have a shape. Well, that's because order doesn't matter. This one has a shape, but we can't talk about it because this is just as correct as this, or maybe it's just as correct as that. So we can't talk about that. And here, when I average basketball and volleyball, I end up with football, and that doesn't make sense. Or cross country and football, and I end up with something between swimming and volleyball. So the average doesn't make sense either. Neither does the measures of spread or shape, etc. But the one thing you can talk about is the mode, the one that occurs most often, because here most people pick football. Here, most people picked football. And they also did the same thing here as well. So in this case, we can talk about the mode, but we can't talk about the other features. All right, so be very, very careful about that. And there's a note at the bottom of the page of this that says exactly that. Do not describe shape, center, spread, or unusual features. Do talk about the mode, what happens most. All right. The next thing it asks us to do, and I'm going to pause this for just a second, at least I'm going to try to. I should talk about the box plot very briefly. In a box plot, I should talk about a dot plot very quickly. And basically, at the bottom, I have the categories, all right? And then I have the number of times they occurred. And truthfully, this should have been labeled frequency, all right? This should have been labeled frequency, and it's the number of times something occurred. So in this case, we said that basketball occurred 8 times. Well, at the very bottom of the page, it asks us to create 3 bar charts. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's so easy to do. I find that bar charts, the easiest way to create a bar chart is to start off with a dot plot. So I'm just going to create one here. And all I did is I created a dot plot, and then I boxed it in. All right, notice I'm having the columns not touch. And the reason they're not touching is because there's no order to them. All right, and so consequently, it doesn't go from tennis to volleyball. It does in this one, but over here, it went from tennis to swimming. So they shouldn't be in order when they touch. That's implying an order. And this is a bar chart that I just made out of a simple box plot. And every now and then you're going to be asked to do this on an AP exam, not always, or not even frequently, but the easiest way is to set up a dot plot and then just box it in. Make sure you always have your labels, okay? Make sure you always have your labels, and this will conclude this video.